There we go.
Oh, look at that. It looks like we're about to do some kind of podcast.
Well, this is the
Next up on Professor Santos.
right. Ready yet?
Professor Santos.
Welcome to Island Connections. This could be right.
He has his
Oh my God.
You see?
Oh, go. Welcome to Island Connections. On today's episode,
we're following Mary, Kunmi, Danico around here on campus, all the way to Korea and back for some exciting developments in, I think, not only her career, but the development of the Center for Oral History.
as well as the department.
The department is changing. We're changing along with it. I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, folks.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, what's up?
Okay, so you're the new director of Center for Oral History. We just got back from a huge trip in Korea. You have your own research. You've been running constant Franklin Odo things. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I like having multiple things, you know?
It seems like that.
Yeah, I like to juggle.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes they drop, but I always pick it up.
Yeah, good.
But the good thing is I have a lot of folks I can juggle with.
That's true.
So, yeah, especially here in this department.
Yeah, well, okay. Tell us more about that. Like, let's get into the specifics of some of the projects you're working on. We can start with your second favorite and then move up to your first.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the juggling I do with the people.
Well, I mean, you
in
have
the
so many.
department.
You can go that route too. But.
So I'm finishing up a Millennial Gen Z project. So from 2016 to 2020, we were looking at millennials and Gen Zs and looking at attitudes. So from interviews and surveys and all that kind of stuff. So we just finished a special series, a journal that one of our colleagues is also in, and looking at millennials and Gen Zs in higher education.
In higher education.
Well, we're also looking at like macro, like, you know, what are some of the issues? Who are this generation? What impacts them? The social issues from Black Lives Matter to, you know, anti-Asian hate, to the role of social media. So we have a lot of different things. And then plus we have folks in higher ed talking about oceanic Blackness. We're also talking about undergraduate research. So yeah, so that journal should be coming out this month, pretty soon.
Who are some of the other people involved in that?
So there are a lot of former colleagues and former students. So I have Winnie Dong, who is an awesome director of Office of Undergraduate Research, an engineering faculty member who really loves students and have done a lot to, you know, enhance their professional endeavors. We also have Peter Hannick, who is a criminologist, and he looks at police state normally, but in this he looks at generational attitudes. We have Faye Wax, she looks at the role of social media. Kelly Wen, who's at Baruch University, PhD student, is looking at careers and aspirations. And then Winnie also had 3 other co-authors too from the Office of Undergraduate Research. We have Stephanie Jones, who's looking at the role of Black Lives Matter. And then last but not least, Ethan Caldwell, our very own faculty member in the Department of Ethnic Studies, writes about oceanic Blackness. And it's a continuation of another write-up he did that was a photo essay, but this is more of like following on the qualitative interviews that he did. So yeah. And then from that project, I'm actually still working on a book. So that's what Faye and I are finishing up a book on Millennial Gen Z.
Really?
Yeah.
When did all that? Okay, so it
So
sounds
2016 till now.
till now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of research.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
we were just talking about.
Yeah. So about
Research.
2,000 people that we surveyed, and we've done like major interviews. Yeah. So yeah, it's a major research.
Is that kind of a capstone on your time at Pomona, or it also seems like you have a lot of stuff carrying over from that? Like, how are you handling this transition to this new?
Oh,
position?
yeah. No, it's like I'm new but not new.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling everyone. And the transition's been great because I've been able to bring in like Ethan along with the Millennial Gen Z project, which is a little bit different. So the book is separate. The book is a larger project that took 4 or 5 years to do. So we're still finishing that up. But I think the transition is great because my inclination has always been to, I love talking to people and learning about their life and learning about their history. So as the new director at the Oral History Center for Oral History, it's like ideal.
Yeah.
You know, I feel so lucky that, hey, I get paid to like talk to people and learn from their experiences and fill in the very holes or pukas in history. So it's just, yeah, it's really gratifying. And the center's been doing great work. I mean, it's 48 years. So from Chad to Warren and Michi to Davey to Ty and then myself, I mean, there's such a great legacy of folks who are really committed to the stories that are here in Hawaii on all the neighbor islands. But I'm trying to take it to more oceanic oral history and really expanding on diasporic work, which leads to our work that we did in Korea.
Yeah, that seems like it's going to take up a lot of our time in this conversation. Like, we spent, how many days were we?
I don't know. I was there for 10 days. I think you were there for 7 days, right? Yeah.
And what brought you there in the first place? And then where did we end up?
Well, the first place, if you want to go really way back, I was born in Korea, so I'm an immigrant. But I went back as a Fulbright scholar. And so from that experience, looking at reverse migration, I was really interested on Korean Americans going back to Korea to become K-pop stars. So this was back in 2005, right?
Okay.
So when K-pop was just starting, you know, started in like in the 90s, but when people started to really hear more about it. So I wanted to find out, are there Korean Americans or Campos who are going back to Korea to become stars? And the reality is the race relations in the continent, as well as in Hawaii, it's really hard for Asian Americans to make it in the mainstream, right? And in terms of in the media, it's changed a lot. I mean, we do see a little bit more, but still in music, it's really, you know, certain niches, right? Like you have to go and seek them. They're not really on mainstream. And so I got to interview some folks who are actually now pretty big early on when they're going through the training camps and so forth. And I was also looking at Korean adoptees, people who are going back to Korea to kind of try to find their identity and roots, interviewed transnational corporations where families were moving back to Korea to work in a very like high level expat community life. And then tangentially, I ended up looking at Filipino domestic workers because what I noticed is through the observations that they had so many Filipino nannies working for these expat communities. So I did that during my year as a Fulbright scholar. And then I got to build connections with Dae-young, who you met, who was at the U.S. Embassy at the time. And from 2005 till now, we've stayed in touch. And every time I've taken students to Korea for experiential programs, or to go there to do research, we always met and connected. And so throughout the years, I think last time when I went, she's been wanting me to come to Gwangju. And so I said, okay, let's go. And Rod Labrador, the chair of the department, he and I met with her at the university that she was working at. And, you know, she was just saying, yeah, you guys have to come visit Gwangju. And I met with Jimin, who you met as well, who has connections to Palau and has been creating makerspace. And his whole focus is on islands, like connecting islands and creating opportunities for restorative work, like farming and also in terms of industry. He's just a really cool guy. And so I'm like, and he's in Gwangju. So I said, okay, let's go check it out. Giving people a space to create what they want. Right, giving agency to the people, and that's what is more important. It's really a relational philosophy as opposed to a transactional one, where a lot of people they'll learn a trade and they'll kind of make a business out of it. For him, it's like, let's all do it together. It's more of a collective action where folks, they have fun while they're learning and growing, but they can do entrepreneurship, but it's a collective effort as opposed to an individual one. So it's a different kind of philosophy than other business. Because the point of when it's profitable is not when they're selling things. So that's not what's profitable. Is when people are able to realize that, hey, we can actually do this together, and that they're able to bring in that energy and build that community, and that's when it becomes profitable. Every time I go back to Korea, I intentionally want to learn about places that I've never been. It's very comfortable, I guess, to go to the same spots, but I really wanted to look at marginalized communities in Korea, the ones who really are underrepresented or invisible. So I think when I took students, the first place we went was Ansan.
Yes.
Ansan has the largest number of non-Koreans living in that city. So we met with Nepalese, we went to Russian markets, went to German markets. Most of the folks are not Korean, and the students are like, hey, I thought we're going to Korea, we're going to Ansan. But it's really to kind of show the inequality that exists, continues to exist in Korea, the challenges of marginalized communities, and, you know, really the persistence of a lot of these folks to try to make it, because most of them kind of reminds me of like early on, if you compare it to Hawaii, a lot of folks who came in on the plantation did not plan on staying, right? Many of them were sojourners, they're planning on going back. I see the same resemblance in Korea. There are a lot of overseas workers who are there to help their families. You know, remittance, sending money back is a very, very common thing. And it's so cool that they're able to pick up multiple languages. You know, I feel so ashamed sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should speak way more languages. But I think I think of my research trips as learning opportunities. Yeah. I'm always very curious. I love meeting people. And now as the director, I think collecting oral histories of communities in Korea, for example, who are not Korean is really, really important, because the long legacy of Korea is that it's always been very multiracial, multi-ethnic. And sadly, the Japanese settler colonialism is reality. Same with Asian settler colonialism in Korea because of the role of the Chinese and the impact it's had on, you know, our communities. And I think I told you, I found out 15 years ago, I'm actually part Japanese too, right? So it's just like, I think the more we ask and the more stories we hear, it fills in the historical holes. You know, the things that you read, like you're saying, I'm going to quiz you on this book back here, right? Like there are a lot of the stories that folks can tell us that are not in there. And these are not just like the prominent military leaders or presidents. This is everyday people who work in the garment district, who work in the industry, or the older elders that we see who are pulling cardboard boxes, you know, just to recycle and make money. A lot of those stories are really important because when my parents lived there and when I was born, we didn't have toilets. I mean, it was like, I sound like a really old, but back in my day, we didn't have, but we were the first in our family to have flushable toilets. And so, you know, I think recalling and remembering things is so important to let folks understand that, yeah, some people say, oh yeah, like you made it now. Actually, really? Like, did I really make it? There are folks who are still struggling in the eyes of maybe folks who have quote unquote made it. They're survivors, man. I mean, like I see them contributing to the country in ways that people don't give them credit for. And they sacrifice so much so their children could potentially have better opportunities. But many of them get abandoned by their kids. I mean, these are things that people don't talk about. There are elderlies who are homeless now in Korea. There are children who don't want to take care of their parents. You know, it's not what people imagine like the proper Koreans are supposed to be. I think that's, I'm going on and on, but yeah, I think that's why, you know, I love going back.
Yeah, it does. I was going to ask about the kind of importance of oral history, but you made it very clear of how just capturing those stories, especially in Korea's current like geographic space where some of the outlying areas are just emptying of youth, and also to kind of counterbalance it with those hyper modern and real images of K-pop. You know, being there, it was so different to see what I see in K-pop versus what we were seeing.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah. Techno-Orientalism, right? I mean, you definitely see that whether it's in like anime, manga, you know, and K-pop, images of, you know, gender doing, gender bending, gender being, you know, it's like techno-Orientalism is everywhere. So it's really, really interesting, you know, especially in the role of K-pop.
K-pop, techno-Orientalism,
Korean food.
Yeah, I was about that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this trip that you brought us on and getting to show us around where you come from, but also tying it into your future research and all of the exciting things you're doing. You're truly, I think, exemplifying oceanic ethnic studies for whatever that means at this point as we create it. So now let's talk about what you envision for the Center for Oral History.
Welcome back, and so great to see you, Mary. And I just also was curious, you know, we've talked a little bit about the Korea trip, we've talked a little bit about your time before being director for the Center for Oral History. And just kind of curious, where do you see the center going? What kind of goals and visions do you have for not just yourself, but especially for the center, and where you can take it in this sort of oceanic perspective?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think first and foremost is I want to kind of preserve a lot of the things that have been done. I think there's a lot to celebrate in the 48 years of the center's work. And I think in terms of mission and vision, I'm still learning. So I think it's really important for me to really get a sense of what's been done, how we can work off that, and build our expansive community in Hawaii. I really want to make sure that it's not an Oahu-centric story, nor is it just Hawaii only, because as we know, a majority of the folks who are of Hawaiian descent don't even live here in Hawaii, right? We know that looking at Hawaiian diaspora is really, really important. And so one of the interviews I did recently, one of the first interviews I did was with Kaena Wines, with Michael Kaena. He is Kanaka from Hawaii who is now making wine in Los Olivos. And so I think it's really trying to branch out and talking to community to see what the community wants to be told, what is important. I think is a lot of learning for me right now. I think that's where I have to kind of go from. I think the vision, though, is I love the idea of oceanic ethnic studies. And tying in that, I wanted to expand onto oceanic oral histories. So continue to do the work that, Davey and Ty and Warren and Michi have done, but also filling in the holes of stories that we haven't yet told. So, for example, in the Honouliuli oral history project that we're doing with the national parks, there are POWs that lived in Honouliuli. A lot of folks don't realize that this is the only federal park where they had prisoners of war. And majority of the prisoners of the war of Korean descent. 2,500 of them were Korean. There are also Okinawans and there are also Filipinos. So sometimes people joke when I say I really want to, tell more Korean stories, Filipino stories, also Chinese stories, and Okinawan stories. People say, hey, you just want to research all your people, right? But I think that's the part of, being a oral historian or someone who wants to ensure that all the voices are toward. It's not just people who are my people, right? It's really about what does the community want to hear. So I think the vision is that. And, one area also coming back after 25 years of being away, I just noticed how Hawaii has changed a lot, right? There are parts that reminds me of California, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, right? And some of my favorite restaurants or some of the great businesses that I would frequent are no longer here. And so one area that we are exploring is what I'm calling the Centennial Project, but it's really like 50 years to 100 years of businesses, organizations, restaurants, whatever it may be, that have been in Hawaii, on all the islands for 50 to 100 years. And so we're planning to try to capture those oral histories. And the center did a great lay oral history of lay stand, but I just met another lay stand right by the airport called Gladys, and they've been around for 140 years. There's a general store, Hirano General Store on the Big Island. There's Ueda Shores here, Ueda, the shoe store, right here on University. That's been over 100 years. So I think trying to fill in the narratives of Hawaii in that way, and then taking it oceanic is that looking at those, for example, after the internment, people of Japanese descent, Okinawan descent, Korean, Filipino, who are forced to go back to their heritage country, right, or their home country. And so we're looking, starting to do some research on Hiroshima, Okinawa, and Osaka to see a lot of the Japanese folks who are forced to go back and who have ties still to Hawaii. 120 years of Korean immigration just this year, right? And so those of many folks don't realize that Koreans have been here for that long, right? Before Hawaii was a state. But many folks continue to have relationships and ties with people in Korea, like you and I, right? We both still have families in Korea, in Japan too. I don't know where my Japanese side is, and so I think our stories and narratives are so much more complex than just one-dimensional migration patterns, right? We're diasporic. Eventually, even Latin America, there are other areas too, but Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, the oceanic or oceanic waves, I think are really important waves. Because I was talking to Bumpy Kanahele yesterday, who was telling me that he is going to Malaysia and Indonesia. And he said, this is the same route that King Kamehameha went. And so when we think about Hawaii and our connection in oceanic spaces, it's consistent, right? I mean, it's like, and I think we have always been much more open to the oceans.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love the Oral History Center to do that as well, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you're really shedding a light on those oceanic complexities so
Yeah.
much more. And it sounds like a great direction for, COH to take.
You think so?
I do believe
Okay.
so.
All right. Well, you're going to be a part of it.
Well, I sure hope so. And just to kind of also take it a little step further, as a professor, you're also going to be teaching courses here, and I know you have one coming up, care to share a little bit about that one and, what folks might expect from it?
So one of the great things about my former position is that I got to become really good friends with Julia Wang. And Julia Wang is the CEO of Inner Trend Communications. She's an entrepreneur, she's a philanthropist, and she's just turned out to be such an incredible friend. And we were talking, and she said, we're just kind of talking about how we can get her involved with UH and also, stay connected. And she's like, I would love to teach with you. And so we're talking about it. So we're going to be teaching transoceanic influences, looking at memoirs. So still in the vein of oral history, not quite oral history, but our students are going to have the opportunity to either do oral history or to write their own memoirs, like a section of a memoir. So we're looking at 3 books in particular. We're looking at Curtis Chin, Everything I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant. Mm-hmm. And Curtis is going to be coming and speaking to our students. We're also doing Stay True by Hejin's friend. That gosh, I'm so horrible with names. You got to help me out here.
I can't on
you
that
can't
one.
help me. Okay.
Nope.
But anyway, and Stay True, and then This Is Not a T-shirt, the streetwear, street fashion memoir. And I'm so horrible with last name. Bobby something. Sorry, Bobby. But we're going to be using those 3 memoirs to kind of unpack Asian American diasporic influences and how it impacts our community, our identity. All those books talk about grief and sorrow and loss, but it also talks about trauma in different kinds of ways. Finding one's sexual identity in another book, and also what does streetwear mean for Asian Americans in the diaspora? So Julia, being who she is one of the, leading multicultural, multiracial advertising marketing agencies, has had incredible experience. I think it's such a great opportunity for our students to be able to learn from her as a visiting professor. I think the things that she can bring to the table is actual experiences that she's had in the field with a lot of the folks in the industry, but also, from entertainment to the arts. And so we're hoping for some surprise visits from some people, not just Curtis, but other folks as well. Because even the memoirs talk about specific things. We're also going to talk about anti-Asian hate. We're also going to be talking about not necessarily maybe techno-Orientalism, but really talking about pop culture, talking about the media industry and entertainment industry and so forth. So I think it's going to be a really fun class. And she's flying in every other week to co-teach this class. And then the other weeks it'll be on Zoom. Yeah.
Sounds cool. It sounds like there's so much going on, especially with COH, classes you'll be teaching. I almost want to be a student again just to be a part of that, but I can't
think
wait.
you're taking the class. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you caught me off guard. We'll see how that goes. I'll drop by. I'll drop by.
Yeah, you're going to be our special guest lecturer or guest speaker. Maybe
Let me know.
having
Let me
like
know. We'll figure something out.
maybe we'll do an island connection with Julia.
We could.
That would be really
A
fun.
live session.
Live session. And Julia is really interesting too because she was born in Japan and then raised in Taiwan and went to grad school in North Carolina. And so, when you think about the diaspora and everything that she's been exposed to, and the friends that I've been introduced to by her has been wonderful. She is really connected to the arts. So if you think about what used to be Paua, Hawaii, now is Hawaii Walls, right? Long Beach. She did this thing called Architecture for Dogs because she loves animals. So she curated this installation of architecture for all the dogs with dog houses and dog, things in LA and London and Japan. She did Art Renze, which she went to Taiwan, and this beach art exhibit that she saw, and she she was motivated and inspired by that. So she created something very similar where there's installation on the beach of Long Beach. And what she does is she helps bring community together. And I'm hoping that our students will really benefit from building that relationship with her. And they have this great student internship program in the summer at Intertrend Communications. So I'm hoping someone from UH Mānoa, like one of our students will be able to, this is a pretty competitive internship process, but it's paid. And you get to, I think one year students got to work with Universal Studio as a client. I mean, just really incredible stuff. And, she does use a critical race framework. And one of the initiatives that she also started called Make Noise Today. And it's really addressing all the different types of issues facing Asian Americans in the diaspora. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing how you build the center and more, in the years to come. So appreciate you, Mary. Thanks so much.
Thank you.